All right, good evening everyone and welcome to Production Extraordinaire, where we go over various animation aspects and production aspects and media production with some of our animators here. But before I introduce them, I have something to say. So, BABScon is one of the better cons in my opinion. It has a lot of opportunity, a lot of guests and such for it, but a great con takes a great staff to run it, or a staff that go above and beyond to make sure things run in some aspect or another. So at every convention, I like to present a certain award to a respective staff member who I think, or another staff member is deserving. Sonia, would you come up here, please? Don't clap yet, don't clap yet. Sonia, tell us about this staff member who you, as director, right, have gone above and beyond.
Okay, I'm the president of the board, but I'm not running this thing. That's Jade, that's Jade. But, so let me describe this staffer to you. All through the preparation for this con, she has come through over and over again at the last minute with great talent. She's been the star of our design team all year long, and she deserves recognition. So I'm going to introduce to you Emmy Clark, aka Lost in the Trees. You can buy art from her in the vendors hall, and she totally deserves this.
So at cons, last time it was Charlie Worthley at Winnie City Pony Con. I present to you the Golden Hat Award, a real fur hat, and very warm. It's a great hat. They last forever. And fit over here. Yeah. It's just like these hat Rushankas, but I call them the Golden Hat Awards for the people who go above and beyond at certain conventions to make sure things work and make sure things get accomplished so we can come here and have a blast. So thank you very much. Give me a hug. Yeah, she is. Thank you, Sonia, for getting her to come. I don't know what you told her.
She said, come with me at 5
o'clock.
Oh,
she's like, you're in trouble, come with me.
Oh my God. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. Anyway, let's give it up for DILeak's Richard Sirois, Duo Cartoonist, Minty Root, Argodaemon, and
Spiral Harmony. Yeah, I do the music for Duo.
Where have you been? I've been looking all over for you, dude. He just shows up out of the blue. You're also on another panel too, but welcome, welcome. You can stay here. Anyway, it's hot. I ran over here, you guys. So, anyway, as you guys all know, animation is probably the most tedious, or one, I can't say the most, it is a very tedious aspect of content creation. Because so much that it drives us crazy. And so, before we get started, so these people don't go crazy, I have something each for them, and they're gonna have to pick it out themselves. You each get one. The fidget cubes. It's so you don't go crazy like these people. So each of you get one. Go ahead and pick one out. And what? Yeah, but you only get to keep one. So basically, yeah, you only get to keep one because other people get those. And maybe we'll have some trivia for some of you to win one. So anyway, speaking of going crazy, we're going to start with let's start with the topic of animation. Do we have a?
What?
Anyway, so I guess we were trying to get something shown up on the big screens, but it may not work out. But Callie, if you have anything to pull up, what's on the flash drive I gave you? Let's start with Duo Cartoonist here.
What's being shown?
What is being shown? I'll describe it to you. I'm kidding.
It's black and white.
So, really, it's going to be kind of hard to discuss animation when we don't have it in front of us, but we're going to wing this. We're going to wing this, guys. We're going to have fun anyway. And we're going to discuss about some other hot topics regarding content creation in not just this community, but maybe something relevant to all communities. And we'll get that a little bit later, because I'm sure a lot of animators up here would like to say their aspects on it. Yeah, go ahead and show some. So this looks like the Duo Cartoonist animatic. from way back when of Children of the Night. The animation that kind of set these two up. By the way, Jordana Sirois, his wife, is not here. Unfortunately, she could not make it because Canada would not let her go. But hey.
They love her too much.
Yeah. And Richard, if you'd like to come up here and take the mic from me and explain some of these aspects as we go through them.
I can try.
As folks, I really appreciate your patience because we are winging this very much. Things have not gone quite as planned.
Oh, Gary, you know it's get home before dawn.
My lovely voice.
Will she ever learn?
That's usually the stuff as you start with. When you don't know what necessarily you're going for, you have a small
Come,
idea of a
children.
story.
Tea story time.
That's my wife.
I hope the pirates escape.
We try to time things out
And
using
then
our
they,
own voices.
along with the lost children, to enter the cave. However, the pirates were there, waiting for them. Black man pointed his back.
That allows us to
Mama?
put down a track.
Mama?
Helps sometimes
What do you
even
speak during the day?
the musicians that are going to come
Because you
over
know,
and do the
white
score
princess
for
watches
it.
over those who rise with the sun. But I watch over you, so we rise with the moon.
Sorry, I'm cutting myself
Oh.
off. It doesn't really...
Can't you make it night forever and play with us some more? It would be lovely, would it not? But you don't see my sister make the day last forever now, do you? She loves her children as much as I love you, my little ponies.
I'm ashamed of my voice right now. So essentially, yes, that allows us to trim down all of the scenes and all of the shots that are to do, so that we can keep everything down to the minimum possible with the maximum effect.
Run! Run, everybody!
Even put a metronome behind it. Trying to be emotional, it doesn't always work in animatic form.
Hey, children, wait!
Again, it's a big try.
We'll never go back with you! Mooney, wake up! Gary? It's alright. She never did.
Of course, Gary over there is the pony that does the introduction in Children of the Night. We tried to bring back the children once or twice, but we're not storytellers. It's very, very difficult. We're trying to do everything, and I mean everything in animation, to tell a good story, be eloquent in the imagery, be eloquent in the voicing, especially when you're trying to time yourself to your own stuff. It's a lot of work, but usually it starts out with this, a small post-it notes with drawings that we put together, draw it in another program afterwards, and time it all over there. And when we're happy, obviously this sadly didn't go as far as we would have liked, because we did try to bring the children back, but we're not good storytellers. So starting with this, then we can move on to the next step, which would be time out the animation better. This is all animatic form, this is all very, very rough, and then we'd put more flesh to the character, we'd lengthen some scenes, shorten other ones, and move on from there. And then you start on the next process, which would be puppet building, background designs, and all of that. Because if you try and do everything all at once, you swamp yourself, you overwhelm yourself, and then you wonder why your project doesn't really get done. It's very, very difficult to be happy with what you do, but when you get to that point, that's when just exactly Children of the Night comes out, when Moonrises comes out, when Chip of Discord comes out, that's when all those little things work right. The bigger your team is, the more input you can have, and the worse it can get. But it all starts from a little thing like that.
Excellent. So I guess this brings us to our first topic. Have a seat for me, Richard, because we're going to go through this, all the animators are going to go through this topic. I'm going to ask them. Storytelling. That's one of the big things us as the audience, including me, love to see in an animation. An animation can look really, really pretty, but if it's not telling an excellent story, well, does it age as well as a piece of media on YouTube? You know, will you come back to it years later to watch it again? I don't know. That's an interesting aspect. So let's ask the animators here. How would you go about beginning your storytelling process, coming up with an idea and then extending from there? We'll start with you.
Well, you really shouldn't go about it alone, is probably the first thing. You can go ahead and look at other animators and other producers and see what exactly they're doing. It may spark something in your brain that will create this whole new idea that everyone is going to love and you're going to love. Telling a story is actually really easy. Telling a story that you like is also easy, but telling a story that both you and the audience like is probably one of the hardest things. And you really need to enjoy the story that you're telling, otherwise you're going to really hate yourself while making it because it's a really long and arduous process. But as for creating the story and coming up with the story, I would have to say that the best thing you could do is look at references and look for probably inspirations.
Richard, what's your take on that subject?
Well, he's right in that if there was a recipe for success and making stories good all the time, everyone would be doing it. So even though asking a second opinion and looking at references is good, you don't necessarily understand all the underlying that is in there. So in a way, yes, creating something that you like is fairly easy, but what the general people, those that look at your art will like is entirely different. You can get something fairly easy and go, yes, I've got it, but it might not work all that well for other stories.
Now, Minty, what are the do's and don'ts of storytelling from your experience all these years?
Okay, there's a lot of don'ts. Well, first of all, do. I could go and just say, write a good story or find a good writer. Don't always just look for a good writer, but a good writer who knows what you want to tell. Because I've been dealing with some writers who just didn't understand what I was trying to go. And for example, you cannot just go with a fan fiction writer because they say that concept in storytelling, the medium is the message. The way you tell the story will change a lot, the story itself. For example, if I go with an animation about the subject, just the way it looks and it moves will tell a lot more about the story than all the dialogue that goes. So you don't search for someone who's a fan fiction writer, but you search for a script writer, someone who knows animation. You work with animators to tell your story. You have to do compromises. I cannot just go and think I'm gonna go and do 20 minutes of animation all about Luna. There's going to be a 2-minute shot just constantly with the same camera that turns around her as she sings about what I have in mind. You have to go with compromises. Like one of the compromises that I realized at the first, I couldn't have any single dialogue for Luna. So there was that compromise. I wanted a dream. I had to cut that to just a simple flashback because first of all, I didn't have the budget to make a dream sequence. I had to cut an entire environment because it was too much. So I had to go with compromises, and I realized all the compromises forced me to go and tell a completely different story. And at the end, I just realized the story that I came up with, that I could put together with the animatic, with what I had as a resource, is much better than what I originally thought in my mind.
Argodaemon, I'm sorry, I keep getting that wrong. Argodaemon. Sorry, dude. Anyway, so your SFM there are a lot of parodies, but you still seem to tell quite the story with your animation alone. For example, in the Fluttershy parody with my memory is what's the anime called? Hellsing, Fluttershy Hellsing.
Okay.
So, for example, the poses, the expressions, and it doesn't. You might even watch the original scene from Hellsing, or the abridged series that you parody off, but that doesn't quite tell you everything you need to do. So, how do you tell your story through your specific realm of animation?
Well, when it comes to like parody, like with the Fluttershy things, I almost had a one-to-one to work with. But just because going from a human to a pony is not easy. You might think like pointing is simple, but it might not work. There's an interpretation that comes along with it. But I find that challenge to be exciting, like to be able to make something work like that. But like for the storytelling, there's a lot of we take assumptions as people in there. So like we think of us, well, or like how people would act, but when you have to think like as a pony would think, that's super challenging because it might not make any sense or be counterintuitive to what we see. Like some of the facial expressions and stuff were unrealistic. So like behind the scenes, it just looks like stretched faces and deformed, but it all works in the end. But yeah, I mean, the parody is also, it's when you have a one-to-one, it's so much easier. But telling a story from scratch like that, oh.
I think it's two different ball games.
Yeah.
I think that's two different challenges. Maybe telling something from scratch has a little bit more depth involved to it, but you got to start somewhere. So I'm not saying you're a low level. I consider everyone on this panel expert or professional level by basis of what they've seen, or the fact that you're in school or out of school like Richard and worked for Disney of all companies.
I do stuff for Disney. I don't work for the Disney.
You're contracted with them, yes. We all know what you're really working on, and we'll get to that a little bit later. However, moving on to maybe, I know it's not quite animation yet, something that ties in with animation, that always must tie in with animation is music, obviously. And so this gentleman right here, tell them what your name is again.
My name's Spiral Harmonies on YouTube, but I call myself Duck everywhere because why not? So
Duck here, or Spiral Harmonies, is he works with Duo Cartoonist, or Richard and Jordana if she was here, and work on their composition. So like, you know, what's the recent, what was the last song you released?
Most of the songs of Choices, he helped a lot with those. So it's his mind behind what Jordana orchestrated originally that shined through everything that, well, we gave to your ears, because we can't really say your eyes.
So when it comes to storytelling, how is your part with music involved?
Okay, so essentially what my job is in animation to do is to take the animation itself, the animatics, whatever it is, and add another element to how the feeling works. So an animation is always more immersive, it's always a lot better when you add another sensory detail to it. So, you know, you might have a background scene where something super sad's happening. In one person's mind, it might be, you know, like sad on one level, but if you add some, like, you know, some music to it, it's gonna like increase, you know, what's happening. It's gonna increase the suspense. It may be a sad moment, but if you want to make it like a sad moment but suspenseful, you would add, you know, suspenseful backtones to it. So, you know, like in horror movies when like their friend dies or whatever, like you always hear that suspenseful backtone even though it's like, you know, sad. I kind of am there to add another sense to what they're making. So.
Excellent, excellent. Kelly, would you mind bringing up Minty Root's? Minty Root, would you step out here with me? Minty Root here is going to discuss some of the aspects of his review, correct? Yes. So he's going to come down here, or over here, if you can see it from here. If he wants to take the mic, as soon as they start showing it. And as Richard did, he's going to discuss it.
So this is Linda's Determination, a project we've been working on for a long time. This is basically one of the shots that Duo Cartoonist told me to keep at no cost. Well, no cost. Keep it no matter what. And it's definitely very, very, very. There are some shots that are very, very finalized, when some are just prototypes. This is basically the process of animation where you basically start putting together some of the shots first. You start to test in context. For example, if I have a shot that connects, if I realize, okay, I can just go with a close-up of her face and just not care too much about that animation, then cut to something a bit more complex like that, then realize, no, she should bend over with the head, go grab that. So you get reverse shot of that bell to see it. So this is basically the prototype of the animation. And basically I didn't...
That's pretty good.
So basically I didn't want to show all of it because some people basically told me they didn't want spoilers. But basically this is that you basically build a prototype with all the shots that you have, no matter how bad it looks at the moment, just to get the context and the feel of the animation. So, for example, the shot where you have Luna who's just walking down that hallway, it's basically just a test that I've done in Photoshop of that background, how it would look like, just to have an idea of how it would show the walk. I basically just went in Premiere, just started putting things over and over and over until I get the final render. This is really what animation has to be like. For example, in 3D movies, instead of rendering with all the details, they just do something Lambert, where everything is grayed out and, well, basically very gray graphics without any shading. It's very undetailed, but just to see how they move, just to see how they would move in context. So, for example, the scene where Luna, because originally it was just supposed to go, just look with the head up and just see that Dell. But I realized while working on it, no, she needs to bend her head. So I went back and started working on changing it. And I realized, okay, when that makes that cut to her looking at it, well, I was wondering how do I do that, because the way it was storyboarded at the very beginning was a bit different. So always having some kind of prototype, very fast prototype that I can render in about 10 minutes just to get that scene. You always have a good idea, and I've seen prototypes for movies where basically they didn't have the shots of special effects. Instead, just to show how that scene would look like, they just put storyboards. And the emotion was there. You still felt for the character, even though you had a shot of a drawing. And basically at BABScon last year, I made a whole joke about it. I didn't have the fight scene ready for my previous project, and I just put a card that says fight scene missing. Please pretend there's an epic fight scene. People laughed, but they still felt, and well, the music was already set for that tempo at that time, but they still felt the rest of the... So yeah, it's still very rough. It's never clean. You always have to do that compromise. And then you render and you look back. And you see the evolution of your project, because you might do that storyboard at the very beginning and thinking, it's going to look like this at the end, but you'll have some compromises to do. For example, if you have to cut a shot because of the lack of time. Like in this one, I had to cut a whole reaction shot because it didn't match anymore because I cut the previous shot. And yeah, as I say, it's the evolution of the project. It doesn't look good, but it's gonna look good later.
Excellent. Thank you for showing that, Minty. He's been working on that project for ages. I'm in various servers and chats with him, and he is definitely one of the most perseverant animators I have ever met in my life, or content creators for that matter. He just does not stop, and he is, and that says something about the passion, and that's our next topic here. If you are passionate about something, you'd be surprised how that will drive you in places. So let's start at this end this time. Mr. Music Man, what drives your passion for your specific type of content?
I like just making music. I think it's like
it's like one something, but that's not. I mean, of course, where's that like come from? Like, oh, I got to get to my computer. I got to sit down. I got to work with these DAWs. I got to do a good job. What keeps you doing that? Fear? I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Primarily, like the big drawback to it is the fact that I'm making something that, like, is actually going to like either inspire a lot of people to do their own music, inspire any kind of feeling in somebody else. That kind of thing, as corny as it sounds, it's why I do it. It's like I like doing an art for people. You want to do an art for an audience. You don't, you could do an art for yourself, but, and that's great. Like, I do art for myself all the time. It's just, when you're able to reach a larger audience, it's just a really great feeling of accomplishment that you were able to reach the minds of people through the thing that you do.
And Argo, so with SFM, I find that program what I call a passion killer because it's so frustrating to work with. Do you agree?
if you look at it compared to like most 3D software, it's less intimidating to start with.
Interesting.
There's a lot less buttons, but it still takes the time to learn it, yeah.
So explain your source of passion for your 3D animation, because I find SFM incredibly unique in terms of 3D modeling and 3D animation, but I know very little about it at Subspecs. So,
well,
yeah.
And like personally, my passions come like from kind of two places. I love to create, and I've always needed an outlet. And I've always went, like, I did web development, I did Halo 2 photography way back. I learned, that taught me actually a lot of what I know about cinematography. And so I spent a lot of time doing it, but I need to create. You just have this, like, feeling, and I think everybody does at some point, has this feeling that you just want to make something. The problem is having an outlet, and it's always different for everybody, and I'm just happy that I found mine. But the second passion is music. I like just music itself. Like most of the ideas that I come up with are I hear a song and it just drives me to make something. Most of the stuff I've made has been where I heard a song and I just over and over and over and over and over again. I listen to it on repeat for hours until I can just build this whole thing in my head, and I just get super excited about it.
That's actually interesting. You and I are like, when I listen, the reason why I'm so obsessed with music is because every time I listen to a song, it paints a picture in my head.
Yeah.
Now, there's various reasons why, but the point is I can relate to you, and now I'm not one to act on those illustrations because I don't animate, because I can't, it's artwork, guys. But anyway, that's interesting you brought that up. I've never met someone who said that too. So Minty, what would you say is a reversal to such and such passion killers? 'Cause I know you personally very well. You hit a lot of bumps in the roads, and I respect a man who hits a lot of bumps in the roads but keeps going. Man or woman, correct me, I'm sorry. So anyway, Minty, what honestly keeps you going, really?
Well, it's a bit difficult to talk about it that way, but for years I've been worried about myself. I was thinking, what will remain of me after I die? I was thinking I won't live forever. So at least if I can leave a mark to society, I was thinking maybe I could, well, at first I was thinking maybe I could engineer things to actually help society. Then I dropped out of engineering because I realized that was not gonna do that. I was just gonna calculate resistors for companies who do stupid stuff. And I realized, I think, well, just with the Brony fandom, I just thought, if the Brony fandom can do such an amazing thing for society, I can, at least if I can give my mark, maybe something tiny, but at least know that if I can inspire people to create or inspire people to be a better person, and because I think of all the impact media has on people, how good movies can inspire, because I think of when you go you leave a theater and just think of that movie and just think, my whole life has changed, and might be just a blockbuster, but you just feel like you want to save the world. And that's a bit the feel I want to give to people to be a better person, maybe just a moral lesson or just a chain of thoughts that might bring a better idea. And I'm thinking, well, and those bumps in my life, I'm thinking, maybe it's rough right now, maybe I'm living in a difficult time in my life, but what I'm gonna have at the end is not just gonna be helpful for me, it's gonna be helpful for other people. And I need to live through the own lessons that I give. If I give up, I cannot just make a story about people not giving up and living through this. I just...
Yeah. That's one thing I found I relate with you too. So, and something he said, if you didn't catch it, is that when you make your passion someone else or a group of people, and that's basically putting someone above yourself, making something else or someone else more important than yourself. And that honestly, when it's a person, the passion, I'm telling you guys, it's when you're passionate about somebody as valuable as a human being, it's almost endless, almost. You just have to keep looking for it and reminding yourself. But that's interesting that you share that, Minty. When you animate for people, for your fans, for children, and for various reasons, that it really does drive you. So speaking of passion, Mr. Mystery Man, whose first convention ever, pony convention ever, we don't know quite about how, for all those years, you went on creating The Moonrises, Lullaby for a Princess, Children of the Night, very big projects. However, you went on without going to conventions like a lot of us do to get recharged to some aspect. I go to conventions because I like to see people and they recharge me and stuff. They remind me why I'm doing my work. However, Mystery Man here, how did you go all those years, you and your wife, go all those years doing that?
Well, first of all, I didn't do Lullaby for a Princess. That was Warp Out, which is still a very awesome piece of art.
See, someone is shooting me right now. I mean, I can't even get names right. I don't know where I am.
I can't even do it.
I'm sorry.
It's still a very great
I'll buy you all a drink later, except for you.
Respect the man. He does
So
a lot of
anyway,
good work.
I'll take mine.
Yeah, I think I made that mistake earlier today during the opening ceremonies. I apologize, guys. So anyway, keep on.
Yeah, well, everything that they said is all valid. Having a passion and a drive to go forward and learning more about yourself and helping yourself learn more is extremely important in whatever you do. And in our own projects, that's what we kept trying to do. Just Children of the Night came from the musical inspiration. Music is extremely inspiring, especially to visual people. Every time they're going to listen to a soundtrack to a music, or just any kind of song, they're going to see images in their head, action sequence, sad sequence, or just maybe just the part of their favorite movie. It could be anything. But at the same time, for the musicians, what we produce, whatever we make as visual artists, are going to affect them. So essentially, we kind of feed off of each other. But in the end of all of that, we do it for the audience. The art, visual or audio, exists in the measure that it can be appreciated. And that's why we set all those things out. And that's also a huge drive for passion. Animating those things takes a lot of time. Children of the Night took a year, and it was almost made twice because, well, you learn new things, you realize, you look at it, oh my god, it's so crappy, I can't show that. And you go back and you redo it again. But if you're willing to do this, you're not only doing it for yourself, but for the audience who is going to appreciate it in the end. It took a while to do Moonrises as well. We weren't sure what we were going to do. Passionate as we were, there was a risk of, well, there's a nice Damocles sword that is called the CND, which sadly struck one of our fellow bronies. And that is a huge damper on passion. Even though if you want to make it, you're not sure if you can make it. Just because of this, it's a huge damper. But we decided to do it anyway. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of time. But the moment you start learning from this and you go, oh, I can do this now, and use that to fuel your next production and then the next production, as long as you have a drive and you like what, well, you're a fan of enough, you can still keep going. It's understandable that sometimes you need a bit of time off from this too, but in the end, it's still what drives you. I'm still a fan of a lot of stuff, and if it weren't for the fact that it takes time to do, I would have been doing a lot more. And that, in and of its own, drives even more projects, even more ideas. And those, in turn, are going to give more ideas to other people. I might like to think that Warp Out might have decided to do something different if it wasn't for the milestone that Children of the Night has given. But if he didn't do it that way, or if he decided to do it this way despite what has been done, maybe we wouldn't have been inspired to do Moonrises in the same way either. So essentially, all of the artistic community feeds off of each other and pushes the limits further. And that's... all of that, you guys get to experience it, you get to see it. All of those fruits are all for yours to see.
That's an excellent point you made there, that you feed off, the artists in each community feed off each other, and that's also a fancier way for saying competition. But it's also another way for saying competition's a little healthy sometimes, because I agree. I mean, I do those Synthesia videos, and let's all be honest here, everyone and their grandma can record a MIDI player and put it on YouTube. And the problem is that it was getting so competitive because, like I said, everyone can do it. That's when competition isn't so healthy, because if everyone can do something, what's so competitive if, you know, who's the coach there? But my point in that is that within these animation communities where not everyone can animate, let's be honest here. I'm not very good, I try, but so within these, the competition drives you, all of you. I guess you can all agree. I know you especially, because the SFM community is not competitive, I would say, but I would say it's very lush. Well, I mean, there's models everyone can have access to, you know, whereas puppets, Richard doesn't publicly put his puppets out there, correct?
Well, even if I were to put them out there, Toon Boom is a slightly different program. It's a different
That's
beast.
our next topic, but before we do that, I want to discuss, sorry, see, I am just so clumsy, folks. But anyway, passion. So, I see your passion has driven you to other aspects of content creation, and I like that too, because that's kind of how I work too. So when one door is blocked, you go through another door, and then if that door's blocked, you go through another door. And that's kind of how life works to some aspect, just uniquely for all of us. Explain how your passion has driven you over the last few years.
Well, when I originally started animating back in 2011, there weren't that many animators, I would say, in the fandom, and the animators that were in the fandom were very unique, I would say. Around 2012, I got involved with Double Rainbow, which was a completely fan-driven episode, and well, what we did there and what I did mainly was work on the puppets for that, the Flash puppets. And once those puppets got released, everyone who wanted to learn how to animate but didn't know how to create their own puppets would pick up those puppets and start to learn the basics of animation, even if they couldn't draw themselves. And I feel that helped a lot of people get into animation and get into producing their own content. But after 2012, I decided to make my own animation, which I released in 2013 at BronyCon. And that was just a small group of about 7 or 8 friends, and we finished it in about 6 months. And that was really satisfying to go and put that up on YouTube for everyone to see. But after that, I didn't really feel the calling to animate much more. So what I did was I turned more toward artistic work. So just, you know, images, drawing still images. I did that under a different name because I felt like DILeak Studios was more attached to the animation. But now that it's several years later, I'm actually feeling a little bit more compelled to go back into it, because one of the main reasons why I didn't like animation at the time necessarily was that it was such a long amount of time to work on a single thing without much payoff of seeing everyone enjoy it. But now that more programs are coming out and becoming more readily available, I'm thinking of switching from Flash and going over to Toon Boom, which I feel would be a lot easier with the kind of complicated puppets that I'd like to create. I've got a little taste of that in After Effects, which is a bit better for a bit more detailed puppets, but I feel that moving over to Toon Boom is going to be my current passion, as well as also on the side working on art.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, that brings us into, I like how we're playing off each other right now, because as soon as someone ends, it goes into our next subject. Our next subject is getting a little bit more technical here with choice of program. Now, the big, you know, versus today is, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, Flash versus Toon Boom. And, you know, outside of 3D animation, we'll talk about that with you a little bit. But anyway, what's the latest craze with Toon Boom? Let's ask the audience really quick. Have any of you used Toon Boom? Anybody? Miss, what do you enjoy about Toon Boom?
I've only used it a little bit.
What's that?
I've only used it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I've used Flash a lot more, but...
Oh, so you compared both of them?
Yeah.
What would you say is the...
I feel like Toon Boom has more options.
Has more options. So going back to our animators here, would you agree with that Toon Boom has more options?
Yep.
Yes.
Interesting. Because I've never touched Toon Boom in my life. In fact, if it's not already obvious, I'm not actually supposed to be up here. My director, James Vermont, who's an animation major from South Africa, Johannesburg, he could not make it to the convention like we originally planned, so I'm left up here doing it. I'm kidding. I'm really enjoying up here with these animators who I madly admire to some aspects, to various aspects. But anyway, Toon Boom, Flash in Toon Boom. You're over there now? You can't just switch sides just so you start the conversation again.
It's my fault. I saw a free mic and I said, use this one.
Okay.
Blame me.
They're messing with me. They're messing with me. Okay, anyway.
Be glad you have an animated panel.
What's that?
Be glad you have an animated panel. That's what I heard.
I get it. So anyway, I know you know things about Flash and Toon Boom, correct?
I know they exist.
You know they exist. So
That's about it.
We're going to get to 3D animation a little bit, so we're going to skip him for now. Minty Root. He's at a Montreal, right?
Yep.
University of Montreal, in a animation major with an emphasis in 3D animation. We'll get to talk about how they're experts and all that. But Minty has taught me everything because we shared so much information since the dawn of the fandom. He actually taught me everything I know about Toon Boom and Flash. So Minty, would you like to give us a comparison in your opinion on Toon Boom
the
versus
main
Flash?
reason why Toon Boom is so damn good is because it was made in Montreal.
Okay.
Okay, not really.
I agree with you there.
Basically, Flash started back in 1993. Basically, they needed to make some graphics that looked big and that would not have a very big size. So they basically just made a vector program to make some web files. So SWF is a small web file. SWF is the name of the files that you generate from Flash. So basically, they wanted a platform to make those vector graphics, and they realized we have enough processing power to take those vectors and to turn it into animation. With MLP, they wanted a very vector style with some very sharp lines, the emphasis a lot on silhouettes. Mm-hmm. So it was very, very helpful to do that. And then they started adding tools for that. And Flash was made for everything that required vectors. So you could program your own game, you could make your own animation, you could make websites. So,
Flash is as old as the hills, guys. Remember Newgrounds? Yes, that site was built on Flash, the program Flash. But
Newgrounds would have never been made if Flash wasn't there, because Newgrounds, first of all, they had very tiny servers. You could only host 10 megabytes files. At one time, I did a 17 minutes long fan animation. Mm-hmm. That was 15 megabytes in size. So it was really one of the advantages of mm-hmm. Flash animation. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that it can do everything, but it's like a restaurant that has all the foods. They won't be that good, but they will have everything. Mm-hmm. While Toon Boom, they decided to go from the ground up. We're going to make a tool for animators, just for animation, and if you're going to do animation for games, you can do that, but just animation, nothing else.
Okay, thanks for the explanation to get us educated on that subject. Richard, Duo. When they're both not here, it's hard to call him Duo. He's Mono Cartoonist. That's what we've been calling him. That's what we've been calling him at the con so far. So Mono, in the professional industry, what do you guys use more between Toon Boom, Flash, or?
Again, it comes down to
what the job is.
What he said, yes. In games, Flash was used a lot, especially for web-based game. It was, after all, a web-based platform, make like a JPEG file, made to be very small for a very large amount of people, mm-hmm. For websites and games alike. And several of the game companies I worked on decided to go in Flash because ActionScript was fairly easy to program. You could do all the assets directly in the program itself, and that made everything very easy. But animation-wise, all of the assets had to be created beforehand or created as you go, which would slow down production or ask for a massive pre-production schedule. In that case, you had to be very precise, because going back would have been a huge problem. In the thick of production, you can't afford to go back too often.
Yeah.
Games do this often, sadly, and that's why sometimes you get bad games. They decided, let's change something in the last minute, and it happens. Toon Boom forces a sort of a production pipeline in which you have to know that you have storyboard, animatic, and then Leica, or with the audio tracks and everything already inside, and then with it, you have all the assets that you need that have been pre-approved, and you can go with it. It is made for animation, even though you can still do a bit of gaming now with it.
Okay, so let's. So we know a little bit of, those are both 2D animation programs with certain 3D aspects, I guess, with shading, but 3D animation is what I think this gentleman here is one of the most knowledgeable people in the fandom about the subject, based on all his live streams, and at HawkCon he had a very extensive live stream on his personal stuff, but I found it interesting that how much he's strived to learning about the subject. Would you like to explain between Blender or SFM or which one you feel like is ideal for a beginner?
If you're looking at beginning, SFM is great just because it's not overly complicated. It starts out simple, so you can, all the models are out there to get. SFM even by itself comes with thousands of models. That's actually my favorite thing about SFM, is it has this extensive library. You can go out there and there's this huge community that's created thousands more. I've gotten to the point with my software that is crashing. I put too much into it. But it's great because you can go in there and the interface feels more like you're playing a game. And if you really start delving into it, you can find more layers of complexity, but you're not binded down by seeing all that complexity right up front. So I've never really animated in Blender, but I don't feel like I ever really want to. It's not because I'm just comfortable where I am, but the software itself just feels right to me. And if you know it, if you have a passion for something or you really like the software you're working in, you're going to have a better product than anything else.
That's true. When you when you enjoy the particular field you're using the product for, it does make it a little bit easier to do. But I've only ever used Blender. I haven't touched SFM. Minty was teaching me. He basically taught me everything I know about Blender. He's great to learn from. If you ever have questions, I feel like they all are. But I personally, I've asked Minty more questions about Adobe and Blender more than anyone else I know, and he always has an answer for me, almost always, and it's great. But, so we got our programs in order, but we're running short on time here, so we're going to get to Q&A in just a second here, so the folks up here can ask questions that I didn't get to or that I'm failing to see. Regardless, there was one subject we really needed to bring up, and I'm sure a lot of you are already thinking about it or have talked about it several times in your sub-communities or everywhere else, and that is what we like to call, well, I like to call is portfolio expansion. Now, you guys might know it as bandwagoning, fandom jumping, or expanding your horizons. There's both negative and positive names for the subject, but you guys get what I'm trying to say here. When an animator or a musician or an artist wants to do something else besides just one fandom, one topic, you name it. And so I feel like these animators up here have an important aspect or important perspective that could give us all some good insight on the subject, because it's 2017. We're on My Little Pony Season 7 starting tomorrow, and that's great, yeah, awesome. But the content creators in this community, it's not necessarily shrinking, but we are changing for good reasons and maybe for a little bit better reasons, you know? So let's start with the musician here at the end. When it comes to a musical portfolio, if you were just a pony musician and you wanted to get hired as and this question goes for all of you, if you were a pony musician or a pony animator and you wanted to get hired as a professional in some aspect, or for another reason maybe, what would you do?
All right, so initially, because of some of the friends I've made through the pony community, I would actually branch out to people who have done professional scores. I actually have. I now have an independent study with a movie composer. So I essentially gave him my portfolio of pony stuff initially without kind of telling him it was pony stuff initially. But you could kind of use that to catapult yourself into something that's actually going to take you a little bit farther than what just one thing can do for you.
I wouldn't say catapult. It's never easy. really. I don't care what industry you're going. It's never as fast as a catapult. It's as hard, but I would say it's crawling sometimes. It just depends how you look at it. And this gentleman knows all too well how, I see his work, I'm like, okay, he's actually, from an early stage, he was actually trying to branch out, and I think he has some interesting insight. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I would say that they're actually, they're not two distinct groups, but they're two sides of producers in this fandom. On one side, you have the ones that start here because it's a great platform to get feedback on. They're the ones that want to improve and continue to improve until they finally get to the professional production level and get hired by an actual company or maybe start their own. And then on the other side, you have, it's not really, hobby isn't the best word because it's a lot more work than just a hobby, but you also have the ones that prefer to only make content for the fandom and don't actually want to branch out because they feel that it's a loving community and the community is their family. I see a lot of hate go from one side to the other. A lot of people who prefer to stay in the fandom and don't want to go to a more professional level that they can make a living off of throw insults to those that do want to move on, and I think that that's not really what the fandom is all about. I feel that the fandom should be more loving to those that want to expand their horizons more, and I feel that the best way to do that is to support those that want to improve themselves more.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point. They are people after all. Now, you might disagree with what they are doing or but if you don't know them in person, it's hard to criticize a person because you don't know their intentions as well. When you're on social media and you see the living tombstone on his, 18th fandom he's on right now? But anyway, you'd be like, oh, he's just a bandwagoner. Well, I've never met him actually. Well, so maybe there's something else going on that I don't know. But that's just a general rule before you don't be quick to judge unless you know them in person. But that's a whole other subject. So we're going to end with Duo Cartoonist for obvious reasons. And in the SFM community, there's so many models for different fandoms. How are you, maybe not what your plans are, but what are your aspects of branching out for 3D animation and stuff?
Well, because I've become slightly complacent with where I am, but if I go and try to grab a bipedal model, I have difficulty because I'm not used to it. And if you're looking to become an animator and they have a portfolio where you have this very specific thing that you do, that's not a portfolio. You have to branch out, you have to experiment, try new things, and step outside your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't and you say, I'm really good at this one thing, they're like, well, how about this? Well, how about that? Can you work with these people? Do you even know what they do? Mm-hmm. And you need to, when you have something as a job, it's no longer about I'm going to do what's fun. You're going to have to do things that aren't fun, and you have to be ready and able to step outside of that, what you're used to, and move forward. So
that's an excellent point. That he just gave the definition of a portfolio. That it's not just one subject. Now, and everyone up here knows that in their relative fields, but it is important to have a diverse portfolio. Any of you here watch Shark Tank? I'm sure we all, it's a great show. What they say a lot though is, I don't have baked goods in my portfolio. I don't have realty in my portfolio. I don't have this latest invention, and they want it in their portfolio. They're already the most successful investors in America, or perhaps the world, but they are still looking for the most diverse portfolios. So they might be overdoing it for all we know, but it does say something about the value of having a diverse portfolio. Minty Root, what did they teach you in school regarding your portfolio?
Regarding the portfolio, for example, the industry, if you want to get a job in the animation industry, they won't look at what fandom you're working on, but definitely, in my case, I made a portfolio to get to an animation school, and there was mostly just ponies, because back in the days all I had to show was pony animation. I got there, but I got there at the 64th place. And if you're just having one type of fandom in that professional portfolio, you're gonna making them think you're a one-trick pony. If they only, if they only, if you can just draw ponies, you're gonna struggle at drawing other things. And if they ask you to be very, very unique, well, do something very unique regarding what they want as a style, and what you can do is just ponies, they won't hire you.
It's a very interesting aspect. Yeah, I get one question you need to ask yourself: am I trying to be a professional in this? Am I trying to get hired one day by a studio, or am I just doing this for fun? That is a important question.
Why
not just
both?
animators, but all content creators. What's that?
Why not both?
Why not both? Yes, thank you, Minty. I'm kidding. No, he's right though. Many hobbies do turn into professions. I think we all can speak of that. In fact, I don't think I've ever met a person who ever got to a profession by not starting it as a hobby or in some aspects. So that is a good point to say. But now we're down to Richard, or Duo here. And as many of you know, him and Jordana recently made a decision to halt Choices, thank you. I thought it was a bigger name, but I just wanted to correct myself. So Choices was their full-fledged MLP Disney-esque style series, and it was hyped because the music was great, you know, from this gentleman right here, and from some of my musicians from my team helped them. DJ Delta Zero, he's not here, I don't know why, but anyway, people were hyped for it. I was too. Even 4chan liked it, for goodness sakes. And when 4chan likes something, you know there's got to be something. You know? But anyway, my point is